I would like to call this Academic Achievement Committee meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, August 3rd. And do we have any public comment? Okay, so we will move forward with the agenda. Jonathan, do you want
All
to
right.
get us started?
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Davis, Dr. Baker, Reverend Matthias. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Jonathan Harper, Director of Curriculum and Library Media Services. Our agenda for today, normally we have a standing instructional council update, as you all know. Of course, they have not convened over the summer, so we will ensure that that report comes to this committee as soon as they convene this fall. This year, as you know, it transitions back and forth from GREA chairs to central office chair. So this year will be a central office chair. So as soon as we have that committee set, ready to go, we'll let you know who those folks are and then provide a report after we meet that time. So we will also do an ESSER update and a strategic plan update. Those are two standing items that we have. I will be presenting those today on behalf of Mr. Eric Harmson. And then Mel Atkins is here. He's going to share a brief update around our Summer of Success that just concluded. And then I have our colleague, Ms. Erin Gotra, who's our Instructional Technology Specialist. She's going to join me to provide a Learning Management System update today. So first up is just very brief around our ESSER update. So as you know, the focus has been around accelerated learning and or mitigating learning loss as far as academics are concerned in relation to ESSER. So we did do a presentation previously around the compensation and program that we had for intersession teachers. And so we are looking at possibilities for additional intersession learning opportunities in the future for this coming school year. We have also provided additional pay for staff that have chosen to provide tutoring opportunities, so outside of their normal contracted work hours. So we do have some staff that have done that. We do have an exciting initiative that is coming, and I'm looking forward to doing a full report for this committee in the near future, which is our take-home library initiative. And just a brief overview of that, our goal is to ensure that every scholar in our organization has an opportunity to build an at-home library. So we are working right now with an internal committee reviewing RFPs from local and regional vendors to see what the best fit would be for that. But our intent would be to ensure that every scholar in the district receives 5 books that they take home, they're theirs, that are diverse selections, diverse language opportunities, whatnot, that mirror the wonderful diversity that we have in the community that we serve. And that would happen for every scholar within GRPS over the course of 5 years, which is pretty substantial. And our hope is that allows every scholar and their family to have an opportunity to build at-home libraries. So we're really excited about that. I'll bring additional information to this committee when that kind of comes together. And again, the last thing is we are looking at a possibility of high dosage tutoring, targeted supports for specific scholars that need support specifically in reading, so elementary English language arts. So we are pursuing some possible opportunities around that as well. So once we have more information on that, I'd like to bring that to this committee as well. But we're excited about, in particular, those last two would be new initiatives that would have the potential to come to this table.
And those
Yep.
would all be funded with ESSER funds?
That is the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Sorry.
you have some targeted students that would fit that, so it's not just a blanketed, real specific?
So that's part of the conversation that we're having right now at Reverend Matthias, because if it is in fact a targeted Tier 2 small group intervention or even targeted Tier 3 individual student intervention, we would have to look at specific scholar data, right, to ensure that we're meeting the needs of those individual scholars. So it would be a very targeted approach. It would not be just a blanket, everybody gets this thing.
And would that be something that you would bring to the academic committee in terms of, what you're finding? We're finding that between these grades or this age group, we're seeing this need. kinds of stuff?
I would anticipate, yeah. And again, this is really more forecasting. This work hasn't begun yet as far as giving to our scholars. These are some things that we're looking into as potential programming opportunities. But we are excited about that, and there may be some funding sources available from legislative funding that's been appropriated as well. So there's continuing conversations internally, and when we're prepared to bring that to this committee, we absolutely will for your input and feedback. I'll transition to the strategic plan update. So this is, Mr. Harmson asked me to share this as well. So one of the things that has been convened internally is the strategic plan and implementation and community engagement team known as SPICE. So the SPICE team, and I'm just going to read the roles and responsibilities. So the team will meet quarterly or as needed to monitor the implementation of the GRPS strategic plan. These meetings will be open to the public. There will be a report out to the Board of Education on a quarterly basis or as needed, more frequently if there's a need. Develop an ongoing internal and external stakeholder engagement for the GRPS strategic plan. It will provide observations and feedback for initiative action and timeline changes to the administration and the GRPS Board of Education. The superintendent and the board then, of course, would make any final decisions based on that. They did have a first meeting on the 20th of July, and so I'm sure that you'll be hearing an update from that team in the near future. In addition, so as we move forward with implementation of the planning in phase 1, schools are beginning their work around school improvement plans. Specifically, the strategic themes that connect directly to building-based work are really theme 1, 3, and 4, which is meeting holistic scholar needs, ensuring equitable access to outcomes, and enhancing curriculum and program opportunities. So we're really looking right now, our building leadership teams, the principals and their ILTs are working very closely to do, looking at their current state of their school, moving forward to their, what is their desired state, and working to formulate 2 goals in relation to the work around these specific themes that would directly connect to that school-based work. That will mirror also then the supports that central office provide as well for those goals. As measured by the priority outcomes, of course, these are increased literacy proficiency, math literacy proficiency, reducing academic disparities for Black and Latino scholars, reducing Black scholar exclusionary discipline, increased scholar empowerment, belonging and agency, and increased successful transitions from high school to college or career. Okay. All right, so with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Mel Atkins to come up. Mel will provide the summer success update.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Mel Atkins, Executive Director of Community and Student Affairs. And I want to briefly just give a high-level overview regarding our Summer Success Program. Typically, we would have a full evaluation report. We were going through some transitions with staffing, and then and it does take, usually we have that around December. So we're still targeting that, but we are transitioning with staff, so it may be a little bit later than anticipated. But in saying that, the Summer Success Program was a 5-week program that ran June 27th through July 28th, a 5-week program. And you see there were 11 host sites, and I have the assigned schools that are attended each one, that fed into each one of them. We focused on this first slide, we were focusing on K-8. There was an ELA and math focus, and then at the elementary level, we also focused with project-based learning. And then in the project-based learning component of it, there was either science or social studies themes throughout. As you see, and then at the middle school level, we had a social emotional learning component as well. With that, just over 1,100 of our scholars participated. You see, just under half of them also participated in our quote unquote, our after-school loop program.
Things super touchy.
Yeah, it's bad.
Got it.
I touched it again, and so with that. Some of the themes that we worked on with the project-based learning was welcome to the neighborhood, community heroes, making space for change, and then very relevant, every vote counts. It's just a few examples of some of the themes that were worked on as the project-based component of it as well. At the high school level, we have a traditional focus on credit recovery. It was through either traditional classroom, face-to-face instruction with the teacher or online instruction. Just over 230 students participated. We were excited to say that 25 of our scholars were able to graduate because of summer school. With this, and we really had an intensive focus on really the course failures, so we can really try to catch people up, either that had an impact on their graduating immediately or trying to catch them up for the regular school year as well. One of the things that we did that was different this year, and it was very intentional strategy, as we begin to look for our next round of future leaders, is we use summer school as really a support structure and a training ground for our current assistant principals. And so for the most part, assistant principals ran the summer school, so they got hands-on experience in the coaching during the summer. And so in turn, I know a few of the principals now, summer school principals are turned principals now in the school year. And so we're trying to use this as in future use as a training ground for prospective future leaders. And so that was very intentional with that. And so they are included in this number of professional development. You see there were a total of 265 staff members that have impacted on summer school. And so it takes, and the reason why we have so many is we try to make the ratios really small in the summer, because we know that it really takes intensive instruction to make this happen. And that ranges from principals to teachers to support staff, custodians, and kind of everybody that goes with it, secretaries that goes with the support for our scholars. And you see what they went over. We did start the professional development online early, May 24th and May 26th, were the two of the days online, and then we started with a June 14th in person, and then followed up with another June 20th. And so our kudos to that team, really for making this work even before the school year ended. They got a little piece of it in May, and then we followed up in depth in June with that. And so we don't have any of the hard data yet, but anecdotally, scholars seemed excited. Our staff seemed like this is one of the better programs that that were ran, and so now we're hoping, obviously we want to make a difference academically with that, but that's to be determined.
So are you sending out a survey again to?
Yep. So
staff?
we usually would have done it already, but we were short-staffed, and so someone just came on actually August 1st, and so we're in the process of trying to do something like that.
And I'm just curious if you could give any insight to the professional learning, what content was in those 26 hours?
Yep.
Because these are teachers that
Yep.
work for the district,
Yep.
correct?
So I'm going to let our expert here come up.
Yeah, hello again. So we had two sessions, as Mel mentioned, prior to, in May. So there was two sessions that happened after school. I believe they were 2 hours each.
Yep.
And one of the sessions was focused on an overview of sort of the structure of summer school, and then the basic content and access for the targeted supports that the scholars would receive through English language arts and mathematics. So that was one of the after-school sessions that we had. And so that teed up access for teachers on the platforms and expectations that they were to use from the ELA and math blocks in both the elementary and middle components. And then on the second after-school session was an introduction and overview to our expectations for project-based learning. And so we worked with a consultant named Mike Cackley, who's kind of a West Michigan guru of project-based learning. And we were really pleased to have worked with him and his services. So he actually facilitated a recording and a virtual session for that after-school component, and we ran both of those sessions virtually to allow our staff to access them after their regular school day, and then myself and the curriculum team facilitated those, and then the 2 sessions that we had in June were full-day sessions, and we did rotations. So one particular day was focused specifically on English language arts, and then there was a rotation around integration of social emotional learning, ESL, where English is a second language, strategies as well in both in ELA, and then the project-based learning component. So there was a lot of built-in time for teachers to collaborate and plan. We learned a lot from previous sessions that just trying to front load a bunch of stuff without actually allowing specific time for thinking, planning, and collaboration with support was really important. So that's the way that we structured those 2 full days. So the one day was ELA mixed with SEL and ESL. And then PB, and then project-based learning. The next day we came back, the next full day that we came back was a math focus. So it was all mathematics with PBL, ESL, and SEL integrated. And so, and so that allowed 2 full days plus the half day, and that, people seemed to feel like they were pretty well prepared for facilitating the sessions, so.
Yep.
Great.
Anything else? Okay.
I'm just trying to say PBL, SEL,
Yeah,
ESL.
there's a lot of
Say
actions.
it pretty quick. BBS, PS,
I had to pause for a minute to
LES.
make sure I was using the right
Oh,
ones.
now we get LMS. So
Yeah,
that's
now we're
good.
doing elements, so we tried to find all that.
No element, no.
All right, so our next update is around our learning management systems, and I've asked Mrs. Erin Gotra. Erin is one of our instructional technology specialists, works very closely with both MIS and under Craig's leadership, and then the curriculum department. So her and her counterpart, Mike Hastings, are integral in this work, so I've asked Erin to come and talk with us today about this.
Cool. All right. So kind of take you through some basic info of our 2 LMSs and then talk about some analytics, some survey data, what we've learned, and then just some next steps for us. So just starting out, yeah, I guess I can click there. An LMS, just to put it out there, it organizes content in one location. This is why we're using it. It can access the materials from anywhere, engages our scholars and our families, and it really prepares our students for college and career readiness. All of the majority of the higher ed institutions all use a learning management system of some form. So, perfect. All right, so SEESAW is our K-5 and then K-6 Montessori LMS. We started using this in 2020, back in the pandemic. We formalized our expectations for use. Those were communicated in October of 2021. And in those expectations included a set of expectations for teachers and scholars and parents. So we covered all of our bases there. As far as support, we offer, just-in-time support at any time. We also have 3 on-demand modules that are available to staff at any time too. Just some quick analytics. We have 40 to 50% of our students that are using SEESAW each month. 84% have used it at least once during the school year.
So does that mean that all students are exposed to SEESAW, but only 40 to 50% of the students are using it? Or does it mean that only 40 to 50% are expected to use it?
The first one. So 40 to 50% are using it and the others aren't. Yep. They all have access. Well, I should say their teachers all have access.
And what have you done to close that gap for the others that are not using it? If you notice, I don't know who might keep track of that in particular, either a grade or a school, and then you reach out to your principal, whoever, and say, hey, we're noticing that some of these kids are not using it. any information on that?
Sure, I'll let John.
Yeah, so during the second semester of the school year last year, we did notice that there was even less usage at elementary as far as the implementation of SEESAW. So we did several communications with, through Dr. Gorman's leadership at the time, to our building leadership and to teachers, emphasizing the importance of learning management systems and why we use them, and really from the sense of enhancing instructional and curricular access for all scholars, but also looking at it from a consistency from a parent-family engagement perspective. And so this is actually an uptick up from the usage that we saw prior to winter. So it is improving, but again, that 40 to 50%, ideally, from a best practices perspective, learning management system is a tool to enhance classroom curricular instruction, right, and just access across the board. So we would like to see those numbers increase. Frankly, the students that are not using them through their classroom then are limited, and then the online access that they would have, or parent access at, whether it's at home or whatever, so.
What would you say is you feel good, like 80% is the number, like, yeah, we're really knocking it out of the park, or is it 70?
That's a good question, and I think it depends on, it really is about enhancing learning opportunities. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is the usage analytics are just a number, right? That's just a number of times that someone is logged in or regular usage. But are we seeing enhancement of learning of scholars through the platform? And I think that's a question that we're trying to dig more deeply into. And Aaron and Craig and the team are looking at a number of different pieces of data to see how are we using these tools, not just as a tool and saying use it, right? But through best practices, are we actually enhancing opportunities for all scholars to engage in content and learning?
Well, I know we're going to get into a survey that was sent out for Schoology, but have we had any sort of survey or anything regarding SEESAW of like why certain teachers aren't using it, or what obstacles might be in their way, or anything like that?
We did not do a survey this year. We did one last year. The Schoology survey was really because this was our first year using it district-wide. So yeah, our plans are to do a SEESAW survey this year because of, what we've been seeing. But yeah, we did not do one this year.
I'm just thinking of it from a parent's perspective because I will have 4 in the district this coming year, but I noticed this past year there were different teachers use different things. So I had like 5 apps on my phone that I had to go to get information. And it seems exciting to just have one where I could go for all of my kids. So.
And that's a unique perspective from you as a parent, right? And we've heard that from other parents as well. Like that's one of the things that, if we are using the learning management system effectively, it does become like a single point of access for parents and their scholars and whomever else may be supporting them to access learning tools, right? Versus what you just described as kind of these bits and pieces, and you have to log in all over the place. So that's one of the things that we're trying to really build capacity of our organization and understanding around why, it's not just about the tool in and of itself. It's the why behind it and how it enhances learning opportunities for our students.
Yeah, and the other thing that it's helpful, I'm just sharing, just so you know, from a parent's perspective, it's helpful at home when I have the 4, especially during COVID times. But my oldest really knew the program, and so when her sister, who was new to the program, had questions, she could help.
Sure.
Whereas I wasn't as much help as my oldest daughter. So that was nice as well.
Very good. Are you ready to move on?
Sure. All right, so let's talk about Schoology. We piloted 4 buildings in 2020, and then this past year, 2021, was our full district adoption. We communicated expectations out to staff in the spring of 2021 and again in the fall. We've offered lots of different types of support. My partner, Mike Hastings, has been in buildings, meeting one-on-one with teachers and in group settings. We've put together some self-paced courses. We've done some 3-hour, what we call boot camps, to get the beginner up to speed with using Schoology. And then we've made sure to have Schoology sessions at our 2 instructional technology and curriculum conferences that we hosted this past year. So yeah, that's some basic info. Looking at some analytics, you can see the number of scholars we've had logged in and teachers. It's hard to really get a percentage of these because we have so many teachers that are in Schoology, but that are not necessarily classroom teachers. So like support staff could be in as a teacher. We've had 645 teachers log in. Our parent number is kind of low. That's our big focus for this year. We'd like to see that increase drastically. But overall, we're pretty happy with our analytics for usage of Schoology.
Schoology is probably becoming more mandatory for,
That one's a little different just because it's how our grading is set up right now. So all the grades have to be entered into Schoology in order to get into Synergy.
And that's one of the, I think, unique distinctions between SEESAW and Schoology. SEESAW is, we're functioning as a learning management system with SEESAW at elementary, but SEESAW isn't really a full learning management system where Schoology actually is. Like, if you look at the definition of a learning management system. So in Schoology, the nice thing is for all of our 6 through 12 students or 7 through 12 Montessori scholars, they access all feedback, daily feedback, right, and communications from their teacher. Parents can see that and have access to that. So it's even much broader than you consider a traditional grade book, right? Like a grade book has grades, where the daily feedback that happens within the learning management system, if used properly, is really powerful because it's not just a grade, right? It's everything related to the scholar's work, the feedback, the formative and summative feedback that they get in relation to any of their artifacts. So, Dr. Baker, to your point, it does become a very important part of the process of learning. Yeah.
so in higher ed, we use similar
Canvas or
or
something like that,
Blackboard, yeah.
Yep.
We use Canvas, but it's like, it just is the way education is done now. So it's not really an option.
That's right.
It's not to help students learn. It's just the way learning is happening and teaching is happening. So then the statistics for participation are pretty important because it's like not coming to class.
That's
almost.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, and the nice thing is too, we talked about that from, I think we're all aware that this sort of was born through the pandemic and trying to be responsive. But what we find is using this as effectively as possible really mitigates limitations to classroom access, right? So no matter what a scholar's access is to physically be in the classroom, if the learning management system is being used, that scholar really has access to the learning and opportunities and feedback from the instructor. Let's say if there is a mitigating circumstance that causes them to not be able to be in classroom, COVID or otherwise, and that's really a powerful tool as well. And so we're excited to continue to grow it. You want to talk about the right?
No.
Sorry, on the bottom of that, the last
This one?
bullet,
Yeah.
what does it mean by materials created? Are those different lessons or?
Could be anything. It could be a lesson component.
Teachers can create, they can create lessons, assessments. They literally can create content for their scholars in their classroom. So that is an encouraging number because that means that our staff are not just consuming it as a tool, but they're actually generating content in the platform. That's what that is.
And then is that content easily shared from teacher to teacher? I'm just thinking of the time. I feel like it takes a lot of time for a teacher to fully embrace something like this.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of the platform is all of it can be shared but amongst users within the platform at the teacher level for sure.
wondering too, how would you encourage teachers? Let's say if, if you created some materials, and all of a sudden it went viral, you know, your your folks are using it. Would she be able to say, wow, we want to recognize that this teacher did something that really caused, a whole lot of people to make it easier for them and utilize those materials or those ideas? Is there anything like that you guys do to kind of encourage or incentivize best practices that teachers are utilizing, that all of a sudden, wow, they got 500 hits on that lesson because it was really helpful in capsulizing whatever?
Not currently, but once we've given the teachers the time this year to really get their feet wet in the program, we're really hoping to start showcasing some of that, because, I mean, like you said, that's powerful once
That
you
would
see
be really
something.
cool.
Well, and the access that principal leaders have too. So building leaders have access to everything that's posted within the learning management platform for their building. And so as principals are, monitoring and supporting learning that's happening across classrooms, that's also, Reverend Matias, to your point, an opportunity to celebrate that as well, right? Things that come up as best practices that really seem to be having an impact on scholars, that can be celebrated at the building level and, of course, across the district as we see things that need to be shared. All right, survey results.
All right, so we did a survey in the spring of 2022, and we surveyed staff, scholars, and parents. Here's just a few highlights from the staff survey. So we only got 100 responses out of our 690 users. 80% of them found the basic functions somewhat easy or easy, so that was kind of encouraging. 60% had complaints about a function or feature. It could be something small that just was different from Google Classroom, which they had been using. And then 20% indicated they didn't like Schoology because students and parents couldn't find the content. So again, that is part of we've taken this information and we're going to use it to, fuel our professional learning opportunities this year. Sure.
I mean, 60 and 20, if you combine that, that's something like 80% had some issues or some concerns.
Yeah, noting that the response, we had 100 responses out of 690 Schoology staff users. And one of the things, I spoke with Mike and Aaron about that, some of the individual responses that compile that 60 and 20%. Much of that is about, I think, what Aaron's talking about around just best practice for usage. So for instance, if students or parents couldn't find content on the platform, the majority of that is in relation to how the teacher set up their class. And so there are not only learning modules, but Mike and Aaron have been very diligent about helping individuals learn how to set those classes up to avoid that, because it can be a challenge if you're not really following a consistent structure within the learning platform. It ends up being kind of like what Ms. Davis, what you described, hunting for things, right? Where there is a best way to set up a learning, your learning environment within the learning management system as a teacher, so that your scholars know exactly how to get to things and that your parents know. And there's systems and guidance for that. Oftentimes when we see some of the individuals that reply to these, they're more technical fixes, right? It's just something that they need additional support on and to help improve the look and flow of their interface through the learning management system.
Right, so the next was our scholar results. So 232 kids. 95% of them found the basic functions were somewhat easy or easy, but then 18% indicated navigating Schoology was difficult. So again, I think that feeds into the teacher setup of the class, and then our professional learning centers around, getting that class set up in a logical way to make content easily accessible. And lastly, our parent results. Big 74 responses. Our positive responses kind of centered around the potential of Schoology. So they were excited that, more is coming, and they're excited that everything's in one place. Our negative responses were really about the inconsistent teacher use, and then the difficulty navigating individual courses because they were all so set up differently.
So that's some of the things that we're trying to provide ongoing support on, right? And growing the sophistication of our users to know best practices for setting up courses. Because if you're let's say a parent that may have more than one scholar within the system, or maybe your scholar has more than one teacher, right? So if you're, particularly secondary students have more than one teacher, if general protocols aren't followed as far as basic setup and structure, the courses, the actual interface from a parent and a student perspective can look very different. And so what we're trying to do is really support learning across the system as far as like basic best practices about how things should be set up, because then as a parent or a scholar goes in, no matter what class you're in, even though the content may be different, the way that it's set up is navigable and very similar. It makes things a lot less frustrating, and we can get there. The tool can do it. It's just a matter we had to continue to support our
Yeah,
teachers.
it's good. I ask, my students tell me how to do it all the time. So.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that, I've heard a lot of not, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've had a handful of people pull me aside, teachers that tell me that it's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think of it from that perspective, but I also think of like me and my colleagues who are reluctant to make changes, want to do things the way we used to, or it's just hard, or it takes extra time to learn how to do it in a way. But I think that the main thing, I think that this is important just for future, because people will adjust to it, and eventually, whether it's just that what will be a problem is when a new product comes around, and so switching from Blackboard to Canvas, so, and also pushing Schoology to make sure that they stay consistent over time. But it just seems like as long as we adapt to this and then learn to use it and keep it, then eventually it will be no problem. And it's actually, these things are fantastic because it's like all those, like, where's that video, or, where's my notes, or whatever thing. Everything is stored on the course thing, and it's like, it is a true learning management system. And so I think that's good. It's, hopefully the teachers will adjust.
I think one challenge as a teacher is finding the time
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
do all of this. And so I'm excited about the possibility of the results of this survey maybe driving professional development time to very specific problems
That's
that can be solved.
Well, it's incumbent upon us, as central office, we're here to support, right? And so we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for support that enhance it and appreciate staff time, right? It's not about putting in a pile of extra time. So we are working very closely together to try and think about different creative ways to provide supports to staff, even coming directly into their classroom, or there's various modules that have been built out too. So Mike Hastings and Aaron have built a number of modules within the platform that serve as training within the platform for staff. And sometimes there's just a level of awareness about that these exist and that you can engage in them. And just anecdotally having conversations with Mike, he does see that when staff do engage in those, many of their sort of technical concerns are mitigated once they have an opportunity to go through them. But sometimes it's just they maybe don't know or didn't take the time to go through it. So we just really want to support folks and help them understand that we're here to keep it moving forward and help them learn best practices.
And I'm wondering with 40-something schools, how do you support all of that with how many of you are there that can do this?
Really just one. Mike focuses on the Schoology, so.
So again, I might be struggling, and you're working with her, but it might take you 3 weeks to get to me, or something like that. I'm just,
Reverend Matthias, that's a wonderful question. I know
just
that
wondering.
I know that Mike and Aaron and the MIS team have also been leveraging kind of our power users, right? So teachers that because we do have staff members that are basically experts in this and can do it very well. And so they're more than willing to support their colleagues in this work as well. So leveraging, classroom teacher expertise to support next door colleagues is as much as important as having to call Aaron or Mike and say, can you come help me? So there's that layers of support that they've done a very good job building in. And I think the more that we build in best practices, the more that we'll see the confidence level of individual teachers build to where they are able to help their colleagues as well. So we do need to leverage those power users across the district.
I'm glad to hear that you're headed that way, because you're right, we have to leverage, we got to get to a tipping point where, each building, within the building, you might have 5 experts,
Right.
within staff, and so forth, or whatever the right number is, so that we can troubleshoot on the spot or nearly there or something.
And again, the focus is on enhancing learning for our scholars,
Yep.
right? It's not about the tool, but how do we use the tool to enhance learning? And
Right.
if that's the focus, we can all move in that direction and continue to grow. Is there any other slides or one more?
Yeah. All right, so just some basic things that we've kind of talked about some of these, but things we've learned. Scholar and family experience on LMS depends on the teacher engagement. So if a teacher is posting materials and offering feedback, parents are more engaged. Consistent building-wide adoption is required, and we're working towards that. Digital classroom presence varies across the system, and we're also working on creating those expectations and getting them in place and communicating them effectively. Professional learning should be offered in a variety of formats, and we feel like we've done a pretty good job on that one this year. And finally, LMS has the potential to provide that access to the classroom for our scholars who are absent for any length of time. So based on those items, we've identified some next steps. Again, with SEESAW, continue to offer some support via one-on-one support, email communications for best practices, and continue to communicate our expectations and survey our stakeholders in the spring. And then Schoology, pretty similar, continued our tiered implementation plan for that, survey our stakeholders. We are reviewing a potential pilot for K-5, and then work on our partner with our third-party applications on their integrations. So some of them fully integrate with Schoology and some of them do not. So we've been working with some of them to bridge the gap there. That's all I have.
So the goal would be eventually Schoology K-12.
Well, we haven't said that yet.
Okay.
That is I think the rationale for a pilot. There is definitely capability for elementary learning management with Schoology. And so we don't want to jump and just say that's what we want to do without learning from a pilot experience first. So that's one of the reasons why we're exploring the potential for a pilot here in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
It was nice to meet you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So that concludes our formal presentation. So it's really just around if you have any additional questions or if we want to discuss some potential topics or next steps for our next meeting, which will be in September.
One last question that I had, how are you working with, the union to really leverage the use of the system and so forth through that means, if any?
That's a great question as well, Reverend Matias. And prior to the end of the school year, when I mentioned that there was communication sent out from really formulated by the academic team and then sent out to principals and staff, Dr. Gorman did work very closely with Mary Bounds around the why and the expectations for it, and even some of the language in the letter, because it really is, again, focusing on learning, right? It's not so much as compliance to use a specific tool just to use the tool, but if we focus on enhancing learning, that's something that we need to do for all of our scholars, and so we continue to work in that direction. We haven't done any of that type of communication yet this school year. I would anticipate that we would need to do kind of another refresher and talk about, you know, the importance of using the learning management systems and all those sorts of things as our staff come back for the fall.
Do either of you have anything you definitely want on the agenda for September?
Not really for September, just how the, and maybe it's too early, but the strategic planning as it relates to higher education preparation and access. So since that's a new part of it, but that's my usual go-to concern. So.
And I don't have, it doesn't have to necessarily be addressed in September, but I do want at some point for us to address teacher evaluations. I know, when was that? I want to say it was 3 years ago, prior to COVID. We started exploring, just revisiting.
Oh, we did spend, actually that was Teresa was still here, so we did spend a lot of time discussing the evaluation, and there was that's a good question. Right before COVID happened, there was a study that was done that we were going to get the feedback on, and COVID happened and we never got it. So I don't know if that study is still accessible, but more so it was just for us to get, I guess, just a better handle on, as a board.
Yeah, there's
a
been
better handle on the way our
questions.
evaluation systems are done. And you know, for those that are running for office in the fall, I guarantee that that's going to be like that's like the number one question every time. So it probably would be good to help these guys.
So one of the things that, and of course, Ms. Davis, you and I can connect
Yeah.
and talk about topics as well. One of the things I think as we move forward, it would be helpful if we can forecast topics farther out. That would allow, I think, some more robust presentations for this team as well, and really, we want to make sure that we're talking about teaching and learning, right, and the things that are important to our district. So, so as we have conversations, we can kind of forecast September and even maybe a couple months in advance. That would be helpful. As well.
Yeah, and I would like to stick with the ESSER and strategic
Yep.
plan as running agenda items, so
Sounds good.
you can
Yeah.
always
good.
plan on that.
You can always fit these other topics within those too.
That's
because of
correct,
funding
depending on the
and planning,
connections.
so.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say one thing that I would like to see happen before, so I only got 4 more meetings, 4 more academic meetings. So would be just the academies at Ottawa Hills, the new academy that we're implementing in the fall, and future academies.
So another report on that,
Yeah.
follow up on future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But-
really the
Yeah.
update curriculum aspects of those. And I think with your LMS, just the K-5, either schools that you guys are proposing might be possibilities would be good to,
From the pilot perspective.
yeah, just to have an idea.
Yeah, once we
of just-
finalize that, I would love to bring that back to you. We're right now, we're just talking about
Okay.
that, and there might be an opportunity for it. I don't want to get out ahead of any
Yeah, I
principal
mean, just-
leadership or
just an
staff
update on-
awareness of that, but certainly we could look at that, because there'll be some evaluation goals and outcomes for, is this going to work for K-5? So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.